Surprises, hidden secrets, multi-million-dollar trade deals, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. This News Bits has something for everybody. Question of the day for watchers. Do you think it's time to have console platforms move on from the PS4 and the original Xbox as well as the X and move into the future? I'm ignoring, of course, Switch, because that's just never going to happen. Pop off with your answers in the comments. To the surprise of no one, Ubisoft is moving its AAA titles to $70. After the Tencent announcement, it was puzzling exactly how long it would take for Ubisoft to basically do something incredibly stupid. And this is the first thing they did, raising the price of the games that are AAA to $70. But it's not just the AAA games. Also, the fact that Ubisoft's none too concerned about how to describe what a AAA game is. Ubisoft CEO announced that moving forward, their versions of AAA games will now be $70. That calls into question for them what AAA means, as it's factually so wide a description you might as well just say, instead of AAA. And remember, of course, Ubisoft and Microsoft have both hinted at 4A games. For Microsoft, I can only assume that'll be maybe Gears of War, the Marcus collection that comes into stores, rolls out all those titles into one and barely works on day one. But Skull and Bones for Ubisoft is one of the first, dropping at $70, where Mirage, if you go and look, is sticking at a lower than expected $50. Now, I like this idea that they may be spreading that price around, but if you had told me Mirage was going to be $50 and Skull and Bones was going to be $70, well, I would have lost any bet that we had actually made. However, later on, we have heard that Mirage is a little bit of a more tighter gameplay example and much more in the line and scope of Rogue. Even though Rogue did offer a large quest and a large overall story and location, it wasn't near the size of some of the others that had come out around that same time frame, like Unity or even Syndicate. But this should intrigue us, because Ubisoft's stance change and confidence in Skull and Bones is interesting. The game hasn't done well with test audiences, and certainly with the reactions of trailers. It hasn't set the world on fire during previews, nor is it offering a very wide, I would say, gameplay base, especially when you consider that the only other pirate title out there that it's going up against is, of course, Sea of Thieves, which itself has far more range and ability and gameplay scope than Skull and Bones does. Here, you're really just basically locked down to a pirate game with very little to do outside the ship. But the ability to fully customize your ships does seem very cool, and they have definitely showed more and more of that. Ubisoft does support a lot of their titles that we don't even assume will do well. So I'm actually very interested to see where this goes. I do also like the aesthetic here. It's a bit more pleasing when it comes to Sea of Thieves, but when you look at Skull and Bones, I think it does offer something that some players may actually feel skews a little bit more realistic, or a lot more. Next up, and a little bit of a news bit, Legend of Zelda's new game's coming out May 12th, and it's titled Tears of the Kingdom, which I can only assume is referencing everyone at Nintendo trying to get it to run at a stable 30 FPS on the Switch and crying at their desks. Even the small snippets we've seen, though, do look awesome, and I am stoked to see a new Zelda game. I am gonna play the hell out of the new Legend of Zelda. Next up, this morning at the Direct, they also announced Tales of Symphonia Remastered. This was announced at their Direct, but be aware that it is actually coming out day and date for PlayStation and Xbox. And I think that that is one of those times where you can really sit back and look at all the Tales games, at least for me, and I think that's one of the better games. So the idea that this is going to be remastered and put out, especially on all the consoles, is actually quite interesting. It isn't a new Tales game, but we did have Arise. So for all of the games to be remastered, this one is probably the highest up on my list. And speaking of lists, I still got more for news bits. Microsoft has now fully rolled out Discord voice for everyone on Xbox. So if you want to get your internet troll on, you can now do it on Discord on the Xbox as well. This was something that was only within their test sphere, but now is rolled out to everybody. If you're confused where Discord voice sits between Xbox chats and what Discord means for being on the Xbox or console platforms that already have their own vocal systems, join the club. It does allow for you to use their systems, and I think a lot of people do like them, but it is something that at least allows for you to connect to people directly on the console without a PC, and that's certainly a plus. And another amazing requested feature that we haven't got yet, and has about as much of a chance of Final Fantasy Remake Part 2 hitting Xbox day and date with PlayStation, is the feature to crosstalk across consoles. Who knows? Well, I won't say I know, But I just do not see this happening. If it does, it's going to be fantastic. It needs to happen. It would be amazing anyway. And the idea of Discord really becoming a thing across both of these platforms could really end up opening a lot of different ideas for what you could see Discord doing in the future and what Xbox and PlayStation will do in the future. I don't mind Discord. It works very well for our patron. I think it's a very good voice chat system. It does sometimes look a little weird when you have 2 or 3 of these systems on one platform or one console. But hey, if it adds some efficiencies, I think it's awesome. Now, as I promised, let's focus just a bit on PlayStation. PlayStation has been a bit behind the curve on positivity. Every time Jim Ryan talks, it's like a Death Star takes out another supporting planet. And they're doing a state of play today with 20 minutes of PS4, PS5, and PSVR2 that we're going to talk about. We could hear about Dragon Quest or Resident Evil Remake, and for sure, some PSVR2, like I said, which, while announced, has easily been sort of drowned under a sea of huge games being delayed, and the idea that footing a ton for a VR system for a console probably needs a lot of games, and Horizon spin-offs may not be enough for people to make that leap. I'm personally hoping for a Killzone VR, but hoping's like wishing and just throwing your prayers into the sky, so that's not going to happen. There are some titles that I think we could see, though, including a VR Spider-Man spin-off. Something that mimics the Batman experience would be very cool. Also, Iron Man on the original VR system was pretty damned good, and Sony's in bed with Marvel, as well as anybody actually could be, so to see some superhero stuff could work wonders to get people interested in the PSVR 2 more than they actually are now. But to me, the core games need to be shown. Expect 1 to 2 or maybe 0 surprises here. Last but definitely not least, Judgment and Lost Judgment have shown up on the ESRB rating board for the PC. And that is phenomenal news, and I hope it means something, because in the past it hasn't always meant something. We know that in particular, these games have some issues due to the casting company that handles the game's actors. They're like people celebrating the first Thanksgiving, probably having sex with sheets just holes cut in them. We always get that weird crap with these star companies, and it's happened with a number of titles where the company refuses to take their stars and put them on the PC or on particular platforms because it doesn't gel with their idea of how to handle that star's career, or they found out the star is a raging cocaine addict and erased him from the game like a friggin' Sasquatch video. I'm holding out hope, though. Judgment games are some of the best ever, right up there with Yakuza titles. They are insanely good stories, wicked combat, and huge, then dialing it down into detailed locations, sprawling out into late-night Japanese karaoke, moving to stories that always keep you on edge, and every single time surprising you. I am a huge lover of the Judgment games, and the idea that these will come to PC is phenomenal. We got to see this with one of the biggest games on Sony's platform, Spiderman, and already the mods are incredible. If you get a chance, check it out. They even put Kermit the Frog in Spiderman. They've added so much to that game, having mods, but you don't even need that with Judgment. Just the ability to play it on your PC, crank up dem options, and sit back and enjoy spiky-haired fun with an amazing hero. That, to me, is well worth the price of admission. I'd like to know if you guys think it is. What do you think about the PSVR? Do you think you're going to actually see some stuff? Let's all root for a Killzone VR. It's not going to happen, but, you know, you can always hope. Hope is what gets us through the day without screaming too much. Peace out. I hope you have an awesome week.